Hey everybody, and thanks for watching Woodcrest Bonsai. And I'm laughing because I'm showing you, well, what am I showing you? You're probably thinking, what am I looking at? I mean, there's nothing in here, there's no tree there. It's just this giant mess of growth. Now there is a narrow leaf ficus that's coming from the jungle. And then as you can see here, if you recognize it, there is Melina that is growing like crazy. And what I did was I had this great idea that I'd plant some Melina under the bench. So you can see my bench here. And believe it or not, there are plants in pots underneath all this craziness. Because the Melina, Parrot's Beak, grows so viney that it just takes over. And it does this again and again and again. So today I've decided just to dig them up and get them out of here. I can't stand it anymore. And if we pan over here, you see my piece of PVC. Since I water by hand, the PVC keeps the hose from wearing out. But if we come down here to the very front of the bench, we'll see that there's a couple Melina right there. And they've got pretty good size. But they just have to come out of here because they're just becoming way too much of a pain. And if we look over here, there's another one right there. In fact, if we look under, you can see there's all kinds of them in there. And they're all coming out. And I'm just going to dig them up, whack them almost to nothing, and then put them into a training pot. And so I won't have to deal with this. I mean, here, if we come over here, look at this one. I mean, it's crazy. It just goes up and up and up and up. And that's coming from the one on the ground. So dig them up, put them in pots, and reclaim this bench, because believe it or not, there are trees in pots. In fact, this whole section from about here on where you can see this narrow leaf ficus, it's all narrow leaf ficus, you just can't see them. And I know they're struggling. Here's the top of another narrow leaf ficus that's just barely peeking up. So get the shovel and let's get started. I've got the first one dug up. It seems to be pretty loose. And I have no idea where this thing goes, how far up into the bench it goes. So I'm just going to chop it with some loppers. And there's another piece that's growing up. And now I should be able to just yank it out of the ground with almost no roots, but these guys are tough. So now we're going to take it to the bench and stick it in a pot with some soil, with some potting soil. Here it is on a tray that will collect the soil. And as you can see, even with the huge cuts that I just did right here, it's got a whole bunch of excess growth. But if you'll notice, it's got these two tiny little pieces right here, and guess what? That's where I'm going with it. I'm chopping off the whole thing. And I'm only going to use these two. So that probably can be accomplished with the loppers to begin with. And didn't get it all the way through, but then use the concave cutters. So this is another classic example. And you know, I could probably root this, but you know, I've got so much of it now that it's just going into the yard trash. Then we need to clean this baby up. So which one do I go to? The lower one or the bigger one? And then I have to look at the roots. We got some funky roots. Actually, I'm going to cut all the roots too. Try to save some of these little feeder guys. Okay, this one or this one? Let's go to the top one first and see what we're dealing with. Sometimes you have to do this in stages. So one cut, and then bring it up, and two cuts. I think I like this one better, even though this smaller one. Decisions. Where do you go? Everyone raise their hand. Who wants a smaller one? Who wants a bigger one? Okay, the smaller one it is. Oh. Okay, come on. There we go. There we go. It's just barely hanging on by a thread. Don't cut into the small one. Alright, the beginnings of a magnificent bonsai. And then I'm going to use my trusty strawberry trays. Give it a little of my homemade potting mix. Got one more root I want to cut. There we go. And either this is going to be the front or this is going to be the front, and that's yet to be determined. The roots aren't really giving us much of a... And actually I'm going to take this root that's curved, going to cut it. I've got two little auxiliary roots right here. So I'm going to take it to there, saving the smaller roots. Alright, then into the pot, like so. And another little bit of soil. You can see the old soil line was right there, so we're exposing some of the trunk that was actually below the soil when it was in the ground under the bench. And I don't want it leaning that much. More like that. And once again, there's probably 20 of them down there, so I will do a couple more on camera, and then when I'm done completely, I'll show you the collection. So there you go. What we call in the bonsai world virtually nothing. But hey, now when you subscribe, you get to watch this guy mature into a magnificent tree. It's going to have killer taper, there's no doubt about that. And honestly, there's a point in me where I'm just like, I just want rid of them under the bench. I don't really care what they end up looking like. Okay, I was just joking. I do care. So specimen number 2. Spider-Man. So chop the roots, as they say, way back. Because it has to fit in the pot for one thing. We got another funky root right here we're going to take off entirely. And talk about stovepipe. This is just a classic stovepipe. Thickness here is no different than the thickness here. So this tree will never get taper unless... What do I do with my concave cutters? Oh, there they are. Unless you do something like... I'm going to turn it upside down, because this piece is the scrap. Now there is a bud right there. I don't know if you can see it. There's a little tiny bud right there. So if I cut to that bud, it will begin to grow from there. But I think I want it even shorter than that. Although then again, if I cut to that bud, would that make a decent tree? Okay, you talked me into it. So we're going to cut to that bud, with that bud on the outside of the curve. There we go. So there's the bud, if you can see it. Take off a little bit more of these roots. And into the pot. A little bit of soil. Jam it in there. Fill it up. So, ta-da! Boy, this is even more drastic than the first one. But once again, and I take it back, I do care. I think I already said that the last time I started this. But there you go. So we're going to dig them all up, me and my hands and my shovel, and just see what happens. I think a lot of them are going to end up looking like this. But this is not bad because this is how you start. And if you're new and you're saying, my God, what's he done? Please subscribe and you can see that in 2 or 3 years this tree could be well on its way to being a really nice bonsai. And yes, it takes some time, but bonsai takes time. And my philosophy on time is it goes by whether you're doing bonsai or whether you're sitting on the couch. So that's it for this guy, and we'll do the rest off camera and then I'll show you the collection. I decided to show you one more that I was able to dig up without cutting it back at all, so you can see. Let's just move the camera. You can see huge amount of growth. Now this one is not the biggest and the most vigorous that has really given me the problems by growing up through the benches, but you can see. And then the taproot, 2 or 3 of them I've already done off camera, and a lot of them have this huge taproot. So take the taproot, cut the smaller roots so it fits into the pot. Try to keep this small feeder roots because those are what the plant is. And then I like this motion here. It has been cut back way back to here at some point. So then we're going to try to get some motion here and then up. And then once again there's a couple little buds right in here, adventitious buds. You can see there's buds all up and down. Every place there's a little bud. If you cut back hard, those buds have the potential to sprout. So we're going to cut it to right there. Get rid of the top. I'm going to remove even more of the taproot to right there. Strawberry container, a little bit of soil, and you know, I think I did this wrong. Should have been there, so up and well, whatever. It's going to sprout where it wants to sprout anyway, and then I can go from there. As you're looking at my arm. So there's another one. A little bit different, had that curve to it. But the same idea, just chop, 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 down to nothing. Here's the first 10, and maybe that's half, but I'm tired. So you can see they are pretty similar. Some I left some thinner growth. This one here has a lot of thinner growth. And this one here was huge. And actually when I took the top, chopped the top off, I actually tried to root it, so we'll see what happens. Oops, and then we have this one here that I left much taller because it had decent movement. It has decent movement, and it comes up here, decent taper. So the vast majority of the rest of these were just so straight that they just needed to be chopped back to nothing. And then I want to show you one more, which is a perfect example. Here we have a twin trunk, but the one on the right is pure stovepipe. Zero taper, totally straight, zero visual interest whatsoever. And then the one on the left has a very nice gentle curve. So I am going to completely remove this one here and save this. And if you'll notice, the curve is nice, but then to right here where it was cut back at some point, then we've got a more stovepipe situation. So I will cut it down into here even more. And I'll probably reduce this little bit too. And I'll do that all off camera, but I just wanted to show you. So if you've got a choice when you're doing something like this, by far the nicest tree is going to be this one that's already got some movement. Cut off the straight, ugly one with zero personality. So that's it for this video. I'll probably try again tomorrow. I'm just wore out. There's, like I said, about half. So if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and you'll be notified every time I drop a new video, which I try to every day. Sometimes it doesn't happen, but try to. And I'm very interested to see what this one that I left really tall is going to do. The rest I pretty much know what they're going to do. They're going to sprout out like crazy. I'll let them grow for a few months. And then of course by then it will be winter, so I may do a little bit of trimming, but not much. It depends on the winter we have. It can still be very, very warm, even though we might get some cold snaps. So that's it. And I'm not gonna not gonna do that again. I've got some others in the ground, but they're not under a bench, so they have grown like crazy. And I don't want to call it a mistake. It was an experiment, but it definitely became so annoying, as you can see from the very beginning of this video. These guys in the ground had just swallowed up the ones on the benches. So I will continue to dig those out. And then once they're all done and all clean, and I've cleaned up that section of the bench, then I will show you that there are actually trees under there. So when I turn off the camera, I'm going to do this guy. Oh, and also they're going to get a little bit of fertilizer and a really thorough watering pretty much within the next few minutes. So we're going to work on this guy. And so thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.